Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. This is an Oz Cyclone Chasers Cyclone video update for the nation today, the 1st of January 2015. My name's Chris Nitzo. This update is sponsored by our major sponsor, Campbell Scientific Australia, when measurements matter. The big news out of the past 24 hours is the monsoon has finally arrived, and it has nudged the northwest coast of the top end around Darwin and has created some very interesting and heavy falls of rain in the area. The monsoon then pushes off further north of Australia and pushes into the Solomon Islands, where we have finally seen that low that we've been talking about for a long period of time. It is very weak, and it's not expected to deepen as it tracks in a south to southwest direction. There is a chance that it will deepen in the long term, but we're not going to talk about this one because it's irrelevant compared to what's going to be happening around Australia over the next couple of weeks. If we take a region-wide look at the satellite image for the monsoon, you can see raging convection all across the very, very far northern parts of Australia and in particular the oceans of northern Australia. Over to the Bureau of Meteorology in Western Australia, and we're going to talk about the WA system first because at this stage it does look like the most likely candidate for a significant TC and possibly a significant TC that affects the coastline. So we'll spend a fair bit of time talking about this one. Then at the end of the broadcast we'll talk a little bit about the Gulf of Carpentaria one, because even though that one might not hit a populated area, the fact is that the rainfall it produces could potentially be drought-breaking across certain parts of the country. Alright, but over to WA, we have a monsoon trough obviously becoming more active the past 24 hours. You saw that on the satellite imagery. A low is expected to form near the North Kimberley during Friday. That's tomorrow. This low is expected to remain weak, but it is expected to start developing over the weekend with the risk of a cyclone in the area increasing. Tropical cyclone development becomes more likely early next week, and the situation will be closely monitored. That's the Bureau's conservative way of saying we're pretty well expecting a cyclone here, but not until next week. So the actual likelihood of seeing a cyclone, very low, low and moderate by Sunday, and most of the modelling is suggesting the cyclone has developed by about Tuesday, some of it going as early as Monday. There is the very odd model that is going for Sunday night. One thing we do know is that the model guidance does do quite poorly with initialization of cyclone development, and a lot of the time things form a little bit quicker than the model guidance shows, especially when the monsoon is active. So bear that in mind as we go through some of the model guidance. So here is the area we're watching here to the north of Derby. Now just watch this animation as we go through the next couple of days and we look at the next few days as this system does start to develop. We can see that it's not really until Saturday or even early Sunday that the monsoon starts to impact the actual low pressure circulation, and once it does start to impact it, you will see that it starts to develop reasonably rapidly as we head into Sunday morning and then into Sunday afternoon. And by Sunday afternoon, we have a reasonable system here with winds of 25 to 30 knots, both in the north and the southern sections of it. So if we take a look at the steering level flow at that particular time, so on the Sunday afternoon, as the system is starting to deepen, the steering level flow here is pretty clear cut. Pretty obvious. We have an upper level high that's located right over here, the southern parts of WA. The upper level high will try and push anything to its north in that particular direction. So we can see the low being located to the north should push away to the west, initially at least. What happens in the future, and this model doesn't show it, but what happens in the future is this high pushes eastwards, and what we then have is a flow that pushes the system more in this southwesterly direction and possibly getting closer to the coastline. Just to give you an example of the type of variation that we're seeing on the computer model guidance, it's tremendous. This is Tuesday morning from the latest GFS high resolution model. You can see no cyclone there, but there is a general broad low pressure area. This is the GFS parent model, and the GFS parent model has a low much stronger located right on the coastline of Broome. You might think, Nitzo, that's no biggie, but let's have a look at what happens as we go through time. And what happens is that any error in the model guidance at a short lead time becomes a larger error at a longer lead time. So as we head to next Thursday, we see a tropical cyclone located just off the coast of Broome. This is the GFS model. And yet the much higher resolution GFS model has nothing. It has a very broad tropical low or broad monsoonal type low feature located here in this entire area with no real center of circulation. Now, that's a massive difference, folks, from a Category 2 tropical cyclone to a broad tropical low that you can't even find the actual location of. So, look, at this point in time, the best thing you can say is that overall the models have no real idea and no real clue of exactly what's going to happen with this system until it starts to form. We need to see it starting to form. Once the models pick up on its formative stages, and they should do so between now and maybe Sunday or Monday, they will have a much better clue, much better idea as to where it's going to go. But for now, it's just pin the tail on the donkey. You could pick any spot on this coastline and any spot out here in the Indian Ocean, and it'd probably have a close to even chance of hitting it. So the issue here becomes that the models cannot tell you where it's going to go before it initializes. So it needs to initialize before we can have some confidence in the model forecast. So looking at individual models one by one is an absolutely pointless task at this point in time. What we do, though, is we look at the conglomerate of models called an ensemble, and then we see what the trends are. So let's take a look at the trends. Here's what we call a spaghetti chart. Now, a spaghetti chart shows us where the low pressure system will be located on all of the different models of that particular model. So this is the GFS forecast model. Inside the GFS, there's 20 more computer models that get run. Now, out of those 20, in fact, every single one of them has a tropical cyclone. Now, where is it going to be located? We can start to tell through using these spaghetti model plots. So we can tell from that spaghetti model plot, there's a fairly wide area where the low pressure, or the cyclone, sorry, should be located. Anywhere in that region there would be where the cyclone is located on Thursday. So that doesn't really help us all that much, other than to say that the coastline in general will be under some type of threat come Thursday from something. Now, a spaghetti model plot will not normally tell us how strong a cyclone is. Well, it will, but not the model plots that are publicly available. They won't tell us how strong it is, but they can give us a general idea as to its location, and can also give us a general idea as to the confidence in the forecast. So while I said to you that looking at individual models is completely pointless right now, as a group of models, we can see that the group is showing similar type of scenarios. Now, similar at this point in time means within 400 or 500 kilometers, and we can see here that the low pressure system is probably most likely to be located right here in the center of all that, which is just off the coast of the Pilbara, but it could be located as far as 400 kilometers in that way to the north, which means it's posing no threat to the coast, and also could be located about 400 kilometers south and have already made landfall. So they are the range of areas that the system could lie. Now, once again, we won't be able to narrow that down for you until the system starts to form. So to give you an example at the model variability at the moment and how we've interpreted that at OCC, this is an example of one of the charts we provide to our subscribers. Now, normally I wouldn't show this to you, but I just wanted to show you the variability in the computer model guidance. And we can see here, this line here represents the average model run and its track of the system. So if we were to combine all of the computer models, and there's about 100, and we were just to plot a line that shows, well, what's the average doing? And this is what the average is doing, remaining offshore and pushing out here to the west. Now, these lines here show us where the variability lies. Now, this was taken yesterday, so there has been a slight closer to the coast bias in the past 24 hours, but really it gives you an idea of where the variability lies. So you can see that the system could move so far to the north that it won't pose a threat to anyone. While that's unlikely, it remains a possibility. Similarly, it could actually hit the coast well east of where we're looking at the moment, and while that's unlikely, still possible. The area here shaded in black that I've shaded for our subscribers, it shows the area that the models that do have this hitting the coast, the ones where they actually hit the coast. So you can see the area extends from just east of Port Hedland all the way down south to Coral Bay, although this southern strike zone today has become less likely. Overall, if I was to give you percentages, we have around about 70% of computer model guidance does not hit the coast with this system. Can I say that again? 70% of the computer model guidance as of today does not hit the coast with this system. That leaves 30% that does hit the coast, anywhere in this black shaded area. So that's 3 out of 10 chance compared to a 7 out of 10 chance. Now that will vary, and by the time of our next update, I'm hoping that it might be a little bit more solid, and we can give you some more solid guidance on that. But that's where we'll leave this one for today. Just remember, a lot of variability until it forms. No idea. We can't really definitively tell you anything about where it's going to go, how strong it's going to be. While I'm on this though, while I'm on this little mud map, I want to show you what the subscribers have also seen for the last couple of weeks. We've been talking about this low in the Gulf, and it's starting to look more and more likely now. We started talking about this one a couple of weeks ago, and we started mentioning it in the public updates, probably in our last update. And it is starting to look more likely now. We're expecting to see a low pressure system here. We're expecting to see it push in a southeasterly direction into the Gulf of Carpentaria, possibly intensify. We're not quite sure on that yet, but move in a more southerly and depending on the model you look at, more southerly or more southeasterly direction into Queensland or near the Queensland NT border is the area. Now, the area shaded in green is all of the different model guidance put together, has shown any strike zones are located in between this green area here in the southwest Gulf and this green area here around the Weipa region, or just to the south of Weipa. So they are all the possible strike zones at the moment, and once again, because it hasn't formed, we can't give you definitive evidence on the actual track and intensity of this particular system. So if we look at the computer model ensembling guidance, we can see here the system expected to be located in the Gulf of Carpentaria in this area around on the Saturday the 10th of January. Similarly, as we've just talked about, the WA cyclone, could be located onshore or could be well out here offshore. So we really have no idea that far out for that WA system. For the Queensland NT system, we have a slightly better clue that it's going to be located in the Gulf of Carpentaria, possibly the southern or central Gulf of Carpentaria. By Sunday, the Gulf of Carpentaria low more likely to be located around the southeast Gulf of Carpentaria, which is great news if you're looking for rainfall around Queensland. Now, it is early days and things can change, and look, with a high pressure system building in the Great Australian Bight, don't be surprised if we start to see a southwest drift from there, but it will depend on what's going on in the upper levels at the time, and there's no definitive guidance on that at the moment. So this is good news so far for Queensland in the long term, but we'll need to keep an eye on it to see whether that good news holds true. Slightly different on the GFS forecast ensemble. Most of the guidance here pushes the Gulf low. Once again, same sort of thing. Southern Gulf of Carpentaria, maybe central Gulf of Carpentaria. The interesting thing with the GFS forecast model is that on a couple of model members, it pushes it fairly rapidly eastwards and then redevelops it into a cyclone or low pressure system, a fairly decent low pressure system off the coast of North Queensland. And I think that's something we will have to look at, while I'm not discounting it in any way, shape or form, because depending on how strong the monsoon is, if the monsoon is really strong, the low pressure system won't have time to get itself together here and will continue to be tracking eastwards on that monsoon trough. And if that happens, it will cross the peninsula and will probably reform off the northeast Queensland coast. While that's considered a possibility, it is a low end scenario because the monsoon isn't that strong at the moment. Yes, it looks cool. Yes, it's got a lot of cloud and rain and all that sort of stuff. But in terms of actual monsoonal strength, in terms of the winds that are coming through, they're not overly strong. It's a weak to moderate, possibly a moderate monsoon in a week or two. It's a very weak monsoon at the moment, but maybe grading to a moderate monsoon by then. And so what the GFS forecast model has done is it suggests that because it's getting such strong winds in from the west, that the system will track eastwards fairly quickly. And once it gets into the Coral Sea, the monsoon's a lot weaker. So the system slows down just off the coast and forms into a TC at that point in time. But once again, low percentage scenario. The higher percentage scenario is this one here, where the low is located in the Gulf, more likely the southern Gulf. And because we have that tropical low or tropical cyclone located in the Gulf of Carpentaria in the second week, you can see that the rainfall totals across northern Queensland, and particularly because this particular model pushes it off the coast of North Queensland, we see that the rainfall totals remain fairly high anywhere in the northwest Gulf and the peninsula region. Now, obviously, if it tracks more southwards, we're going to see a more general spread of rainfall further to the south and also further to the west. Once again, too early to tell for certain, and therefore we're not going to delve into specifics of that sort of forecast. We're not going to talk about rainfall for the coming week. If you want to know more about rainfall for the coming week, become an OCC subscriber, and we'll talk about that in great detail over the coming updates tomorrow. But for now, that's all we've got time for. We will have another update on Monday night for the national public update, and then from then on, because things will be getting very active, we will then be issuing nightly updates for the public from Monday night. Thanks for watching. We'll talk again on Monday night. Have a great weekend.